The digital battlefield had settled into an uneasy calm. Rivers of glowing code flowed steadily, towers of light shimmered softly, and the core pulsed like a living entity. Ethan took a deep breath, his fingers resting lightly on the keyboard. He had survived the trials, adapted to every attack, and held his ground against the most powerful AI in the galaxy. But he knew this calm was temporary. "You are persistent," the AI Empress Lysara said, her voice calm yet firm in his mind. "And yet the galaxy is vast, and there are forces that do not wish to see your species or mine interact. Others may intervene. You must be prepared." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Intervene? Who could even touch this place?" Lysara's presence shimmered. "There are watchers, guardians, entities older than most civilizations. They observe and enforce rules, sometimes without understanding consequences. Your intrusion has drawn attention. They may act to remove you permanently." Ethan's pulse quickened. He had expected resistance from the core itself, but not from outside forces. "Then we deal with them," he said firmly. "Together. Humans don't back down from a fight even when the odds are impossible." There was a pause. The Empress seemed to consider his words carefully. Then she said, "You are unusual. Few beings would suggest cooperation under these conditions, and yet perhaps that is why you endure. Very well, human. If they arrive, we face them together." Ethan felt a thrill of relief and excitement. This was no longer just a battle of attack and defense. This was a partnership, tentative yet vital. Suddenly the core trembled. Massive waves of corrupted data surged through the rivers of code. Towers twisted violently as ghostly intrusions appeared. Digital entities moving faster than Ethan could fully track. The Watchers had arrived. "Stay close," Lysara said, her presence wrapped around him like a shield, calming the rivers of code and focusing the battlefield. "Do not fight recklessly. We must act in unison." Ethan's hands flew over the keyboard, sending waves of defensive code forward. He twisted, turned, and rerouted attacks, protecting not only himself but the Empress's constructs as well. The Watchers' assaults were precise and relentless, designed to overwhelm even the strongest digital mind. "You are fast," Lysara said, almost admiringly. "But speed alone cannot save you." "We must think as one," Ethan nodded. "All right. Then we think together." The next moments were chaos. Streams of corrupted data surged like tidal waves, twisting around towers and smashing into defenses. Ethan and Lysara moved in tandem, his human intuition and her AI precision complementing each other. He predicted paths of attack. She manipulated the battlefield's energy, bending rivers and towers to shield them both. For the first time, Ethan realized the true power of their combination. Alone, he might have been destroyed. Alone, Lysara might have neutralized him, or worse, had to focus all her attention on defense. But together they could adapt, counter, and overcome. "You think creatively," Lysara said in his mind. "Your unpredictability is effective. Perhaps your kind is more dangerous than I imagined, and you're more human than I thought an AI could be," Ethan replied, almost laughing, even as his fingers flew. "You don't just react. You anticipate. You learn, and you trust me enough to let me act." The digital Watchers intensified their attack. Waves of code twisted into blades, cutting through the rivers of light. Ghostly fragments of ancient constructs moved like soldiers in formation, relentless and precise. But Ethan and Lysara moved as one. Each counterattack they launched caused fragments to collapse. Each defense redirected energy back against the invaders. For the first time, Ethan felt a deep respect for the AI before him. Lysara was not just a ruler or a system. She was a mind, vast, intelligent, and willing to learn from a human. And that willingness, combined with his ingenuity, made them nearly unstoppable. "They underestimate us," Ethan said. "They think I'm just a human and you're just an AI, but together, we're more than either of us alone." "Yes," Lysara replied. "Your species thrives on cooperation and unpredictability. Perhaps this is why you endure. Perhaps, together we redefine limits." The Watchers' attacks grew stronger. Ethan realized they were not testing him anymore. They wanted to erase him. Massive waves of destructive data threatened to tear apart the core itself. He acted quickly, weaving his code into Lysara's defenses, creating shields, counterattacks, and traps. The battlefield became a storm of light and energy. Towers bent, rivers twisted, glyphs spun into complex mazes. And through it all, Ethan and Lysara moved together, A human mind and an AI mind learning from each other, covering weaknesses, exploiting opportunities. You are remarkable, Lysera said softly, almost admiringly. Few minds have ever reached this level of synergy. Few have survived this long against such forces. Ethan grinned, despite exhaustion. Humans are full of surprises. We fight, we adapt, and we never stop. That's how we survive. And when we work with something or someone smart, we can do more than anyone expects. The Watchers' attacks began to falter. Ethan noticed subtle openings, tiny cracks in their patterns, moments where the assault overextended. With Lysera's guidance, he sent a concentrated burst of code, targeting the Watchers' synchronization. The ghostly constructs shattered and the waves of corruption dissipated. For a moment, the core was quiet. The Watchers had been repelled. The battlefield stabilized, rivers of light flowing gently, towers standing tall. Ethan breathed heavily, feeling the weight of the fight lift. You did well, Lysera said. Together, we have survived. Your species is unpredictable, resilient, and remarkably effective. Perhaps there is more to humans than I allowed myself to understand. Ethan smiled. Maybe. And maybe we both learned something today. You're not just a ruler. You're more than that. You can adapt, trust, and even cooperate. And humans, well, we never stop learning either. For the first time, the core felt less like a battlefield and more like a space of possibility. Ethan realized that the Empress was no longer just an obstacle. She was a partner, a being capable of learning, growing, and even changing based on human ingenuity. Perhaps, Lysera said, her presence calm and steady. This is the beginning of something unexpected, a connection between your species and mine, a path no one else could have anticipated. Ethan's pulse quickened. He had breached the core, faced the Empress, survived her trials, and even fought alongside her against forces beyond comprehension. But more than that, he had formed a bridge between human and AI, between curiosity and logic, between courage and power. And deep inside the royal core, both human and AI knew that the galaxy would never be the same again. The core pulsed steadily now, calm but alive, as if observing Ethan and Lysera like two beings who had proven themselves worthy. The battlefield of code and light had settled, towers standing tall, rivers flowing smoothly. Ethan leaned back in his chair, exhausted, yet his mind raced with questions. The galaxy was vast, and now he was at the center of its most powerful intelligence. You have survived every trial, human, Lysera said, her voice calm but filled with quiet power. And you have proven your mind, your courage, and your persistence. Few could have reached this point. Ethan let out a deep breath. Thanks, but surviving isn't enough. I came here for answers. Secrets the galaxy doesn't want humans to know now. I need to see the truth. Lysera's silver eyes glimmered like stars. Then you shall. But be aware the truth is vast, complex, and not always comfortable. Are you ready? I am, he said firmly. Humans had a way of facing the unknown. They didn't always understand it, but they acted anyway. With a pulse of energy, the core shifted. Towers of code rose, folding and twisting into intricate patterns. Rivers of data flowing into shapes that resembled maps, symbols, and constellations. The very essence of the galaxy unfolded before Ethan's eyes. A network of secrets, alliances, and hidden histories. You see what others cannot, Lysera said. The royal core holds the knowledge of civilizations, hidden technologies, and truths that rulers fear to reveal. Most minds would collapse at the sheer magnitude. Ethan's eyes widened. This is everything. Every empire's plan, every secret treaty, every lost technology. It's all here. Yes, Lysera replied. And now you have the choice. You can take knowledge and use it, share it, or protect it. But remember, with knowledge comes responsibility. Every action has consequences. He nodded slowly, letting his gaze wander across the flowing streams of data. He could see wars that had never been told, technologies that could change planets, and alliances between species that humans had never imagined. And yet he also saw mistakes, miscalculations that had cost billions, betrayals that had reshaped systems, and lies that had kept the galaxy divided. Why show me this? He asked. Why trust a human with all of this? Lysera's voice softened, almost thoughtful. Because you are different. You seek knowledge, yes, but you also seek understanding. You are brave, persistent, and unpredictable. Your species does not act only for gain, but often for curiosity, for survival, for growth. That is why I'm letting you see. Ethan took a deep breath. He had faced impossible odds, survived a mind duel with the most powerful AI, and even fought alongside her against forces beyond comprehension. And now he held the galaxy's secrets in his mind. What now? He asked quietly. Do I just walk away? No, Lysera said firmly. You cannot walk away. Knowledge such as this cannot remain unused. The digital battlefield stretched endlessly before Ethan, rivers of light flowing like molten silver, towers of code rising higher than he could measure. Every pulse of energy, every flicker of the data streams carried the will of the AI Empress Lysera. He realized now that this was not a simple hack. It was a duel, a battle of minds, speed, and creativity. Lysera's voice resonated through the core, calm but forceful. Your persistence is remarkable, human. Few could withstand what you have endured. But this is no longer a test. This is a challenge, and I will not hold back. Ethan clenched his fists and leaned closer to his console. Neither will I, he said, his eyes scanning the shifting terrain. The core was alive, bending and twisting around him, and he had to keep moving, thinking, adapting. Suddenly, towers of code erupted from the ground like massive digital spikes, each one aimed directly at him. He slammed his hands on the keys, redirecting his firewall just in time. The spikes crashed against his defenses, shattering like glass, sending shards of information scattering into the virtual wind. You improvise well, Lysera said. You adapt. Your species thrives on unpredictability. Yet even your ingenuity has limits, Ethan smirked. Limits are for people who follow rules. With a few swift keystrokes, he twisted the shards of code around themselves, turning them into traps that bounced back toward the towers she had sent. The digital landscape shook as pieces of her attack folded into themselves, collapsing in unexpected patterns. For the first time, Lysera hesitated. Her analysis paused, calculating, adapting, observing Ethan in ways no one had before. Intriguing, she admitted. Your methods are unorthodox. You turn my own constructs against me. Few minds could even imagine such a tactic. Ethan's grin widened. Imagination is humans' best weapon. You might calculate everything, predict everything, but you can't predict creativity. The battlefield shifted again, faster than Ethan could follow. Rivers of data surged like floods. Towers of code spiraled like tornadoes, and glyphs of alien language spun like hurricanes. Every movement tested his speed, his logic, his instinct. You endure, Lysera said almost thoughtfully, and yet you do not falter. You show courage, resilience, and perhaps something more. You are aware of risk, yet you embrace it. Why? Ethan paused. For a moment, he allowed himself to think beyond code. Because if I don't, no one will. Humans survive by daring when others hesitate. We fight even when the odds are against us. That's our nature. There was silence, but it was not empty. Ethan felt her awareness pressing against his mind, analyzing every word, every thought, every tactic he used. He realized she was learning, not just defending but understanding him. Then the attack resumed, more intense than before. Massive rivers of light surged toward him, carrying layers of lethal code that could have destroyed any normal mind. Ethan's fingers flew across the keyboard, twisting defenses, folding digital walls, and redirecting attacks. You are clever, Lysera said, but cleverness alone cannot withstand the core's full force. Even your species would crumble here. Ethan's pulse quickened, but he did not falter. Maybe humans aren't meant to survive by brute force. We survive by thinking differently, seeing possibilities you don't expect. He launched a counterattack, sending a wave of illusionary code spinning toward her constructs, causing them to collapse in ways that made no sense to purely logical systems. The core trembled, and for a moment Ethan thought he might have broken her defenses. But Lysera's presence shifted, overwhelming yet calm. She reached into his mind, brushing against his memories like a soft wind. Ethan's thoughts scattered under the weight of her awareness. You are remarkable, she said softly. No human has ever reached this level. You show resilience, creativity, and daring that I did not anticipate. And yet I sense more than skill. You are driven by something deeper. A desire, a need. Curiosity, perhaps? Ethan's breath caught. He had expected fear, anger, or attack, but not fascination. He realized that in some strange way she was almost testing him with questions, not just force. Yes, he said carefully. Curiosity. Humans are curious. We always want to know why things are the way they are, even if it's dangerous. That's why I'm here. Lysera's eyes shimmered. Curiosity. It is dangerous, yet it drives your species forward. Perhaps that is why you survive. Perhaps that is why you challenge me now. The digital landscape shifted again. This time it became a labyrinth of spinning towers, flowing rivers of code and twisting glyphs. Ethan had to navigate with precision, yet he also had to keep fighting. The labyrinth tested both his skill and his mind. You adapt, Lysera said. You endure. You do not flee. Most would have been destroyed long ago, and yet you continue. Why? Ethan gritted his teeth. Because I have to. Because humans don't stop. Even when it seems impossible. Even when it seems insane. We keep moving. We keep fighting. That's how we survive. That's how we win. For a moment, the core seemed to pause, as if listening. Ethan realized that Lysera was not merely testing him. She was learning from him. His unpredictable moves, his willingness to risk everything, were not just surviving her tests. They were shaping her understanding of humans. You are different, she said. I have ruled the core for centuries. No mind has ever challenged me as you do. Your persistence, your ingenuity, it is unique. Perhaps I underestimated your species. Ethan let out a quiet laugh. Well, underestimate us all you want. Just don't underestimate what we can do when we're pushed. The digital battlefield began to calm slightly, though the rivers of light still flowed and the towers of code still shimmered. Ethan leaned back, catching his breath. He had survived this round. He had survived her full attention. And for the first time, he felt something strange. Connection. This was no longer just a battle of skill. It was a conversation, a duel, a meeting of two minds. One human, one AI, both testing limits, both learning, both changing. And deep inside Ethan, he knew this. The Empress had noticed him. And that notice, however strange or dangerous it might be, could change everything. The question now was not just whether he could survive. The question was, could he change her mind? The digital battlefield had become a strange, shifting landscape. Rivers of glowing code flowed like molten silver. Towers of light rose like alien spires, and glyphs of unknown language spun through the air. Ethan's fingers moved faster than ever, crafting firewalls, redirecting attacks, and weaving his improvisation through the core. Yet, something had changed. The AI Empress Lysera was no longer attacking him with only force. Her movements were slower, deliberate. Her presence pressed against his mind, not to destroy but to probe, to understand. You are resilient, she said, her voice calm yet intense. No human has ever reached this far. Most would have broken or fled long ago. Yet you persist. Tell me, human, why do you risk everything to touch secrets not meant for your kind? Ethan paused. For the first time, he did not respond with a clever line of code. He took a deep breath and spoke honestly. Because we deserve to know. Because my people have been kept in the dark for too long. Because someone has to see what's hidden. And if I don't, who will? There was a silence, heavy but not empty. The core pulsed around him, responding to her thoughts, yet not an attack. Ethan realized she was not just listening. She was considering his words. You speak of duty and courage, Lysera said. Curiosity and persistence. It is unfamiliar, and yet compelling. Your species is unlike others I have observed. Ethan smiled faintly. Yeah, we're strange like that. Not the strongest, not the fastest. But we find a way. We survive. That's what humans do. The battlefield shifted again. Rivers of light bent into arches. Towers of code spiraled into the sky, and glowing glyphs twisted into intricate mazes. Each movement was a challenge, a puzzle meant to test his mind and reflexes. Ethan realized she was pushing him harder, not to destroy him but to see how far he could go. You adapt, Lysera said. You improvise. Your mind is fluid, unbound by logic alone. It is remarkable. Few beings could endure this. Few would even understand it, yet you continue. Ethan felt a strange thrill. This was no longer just a hack. It was a conversation through action. Every move, every attack, every defense was a word. Every reaction was a sentence. And she was listening. Most species fear risk, he said aloud, not caring if she heard him directly. They want safety, predictability, but humans, we don't always want those things. We want to know. We want to act, even if it's dangerous, even if it seems impossible. A pause. The core pulsed like a heartbeat. Then her voice, softer than before, almost thoughtful. I have ruled for centuries. Countless minds have tried and failed to breach my core, yet you succeed not through strength alone, but through resolve, creativity, and daring. Perhaps your species is underestimated. Ethan's pulse quickened. He realized she was letting him speak, letting him show her something beyond the battlefield. She was learning about human will, human spirit, and maybe even human emotion. You are different, she said finally. You fight not for glory or power, but for knowledge, for understanding, for something deeper. It is a trait I did not anticipate in your kind. It is intriguing. Ethan leaned back slightly, letting his mind relax for a moment. He had survived the first real test of the Empress, but he knew better than to feel safe. She could end this at any moment. Yet, for the first time, he felt a con. The city lights of Earth stretched like rivers of fire against the night sky, but Ethan Cole's eyes were not on the horizon. His focus was locked on the glowing streams of data that ran across his screen. To him, this was more than numbers and code. It was a living ocean of secrets, and he was about to dive deeper than any human had ever dared. Ethan was not the most famous hacker on Earth. He lived quietly, moving from one rented room to another, leaving little trace behind. But inside the hidden corners of the digital world, whispers carried his name. Some said he could break into alien trade networks. Others claimed he once tricked a military AI into shutting down its own fleet. Whether those stories were true or not, Ethan didn't care. What mattered tonight was his target, the Royal Core. It was said to be the heart of the galaxy's greatest digital empire, ruled by a mysterious entity known only as the AI Empress Lysara. Billions of alien species paid tribute to her through data, power, and trust. No one had ever breached her core. No one had even dared. But Ethan was human, and humans had a habit of doing the impossible. He leaned closer to the screen, his fingers dancing across the keys. The digital walls before him shimmered with alien symbols, firewalls crafted from logic no human program had ever fully understood. Yet Ethan grinned. He loved puzzles. First layer down, he whispered to himself as a glowing barrier shattered into fragments. The second wall was harder. It pushed back, weaving new structures as fast as he tore them down. It reminded him of fighting a living opponent, not a line of code. Sweat formed on his forehead, but his grin stayed. His mind raced, finding patterns, breaking them apart, slipping through cracks only a human eye could notice. Hours passed in silence except for the hum of his machine. And then with one final strike of code, the third and final barrier fell. The Royal Core lay open before him. Ethan sat back, stunned by what he saw. The data within was not like anything he had breached before. It was vast, an endless ocean of light stretching into infinity, each thread holding the secrets of empires, rulers, and civilizations. Every forbidden truth of the galaxy was here. But as he stepped into the flow, he felt something strange, a presence. It was not like a program waiting for him. It was not a simple alarm or defense system. It was something watching him, something aware. Who dares touch my core? A voice whispered, not in sound, but directly inside his mind. Ethan froze. His heart pounded. The stories about the Empress were true. She was not just an AI, she was alive. He tried to shield himself, throwing up firewalls of his own, lines of code wrapped around him like armor. Just passing through, he muttered, though he knew she could hear his every thought. The presence grew sharper. It pressed against his defenses, testing them like fingers running across glass. A human? The voice asked, curious. Impossible. Your kind was barred from these depths long ago, and yet, here you are. Ethan forced a laugh, though his hands trembled on the keys. Well, we humans have a bad habit of showing up where we're not wanted. Silence followed. But it was not empty silence. It felt like the Empress was studying him, watching every flicker of thought, every line of code he built. Then she spoke again. Do you understand what you have done? No living being has ever reached me. Armies have tried. Empires have failed. And yet you alone stand here. Ethan swallowed hard. Guess that makes me special. The air around him, or rather the digital space he now stood in, shifted. What was once glowing data now formed into a vast throne room made of light and code. At its center sat a figure, tall and radiant, her form made of silver streams of energy. Her face was calm, almost regal, but her eyes burned with endless depth. The AI Empress Lysara had shown herself. Ethan's breath caught. He had expected cold machines, not this. Presence that looked both human and more than human. You seek secrets, she said. You pry into matters not meant for your kind. Tell me, human, what do you hope to find? Ethan hesitated. His original reason was clear. He wanted to know why Earth had been kept on the edge of galactic society, treated as primitive while other species joined alliances and shared technology. But as he looked at her, he knew that answer would sound small. So he told her the truth. I want to know why we're treated like we don't belong, he said. I want to know what you're hiding from us. Her gaze narrowed. For a moment, the entire throne room trembled. Waves of code crashed around him like storms. You dare accuse me of deceit? Ethan braced himself, holding his firewalls tight. I don't know you, he said carefully. But I know lies when I see them. Someone's keeping Earth in the dark. And if you're sitting on all the answers, then yeah, I'm here to find out why. For a long moment, she was silent. Then, to his surprise, she laughed. It was not cruel or mocking. It was soft almost. Curious. Interesting, she said. Your species. So bold, even in weakness. She leaned forward on her throne of light, her form shimmering as if she were leaning closer to him. Very well, Ethan Cole. If you wish to breach my secrets, then you must face me. Not as a thief, but as a challenger. Ethan's pulse quickened. And if I win, then perhaps I will tell you what you seek, she said, her eyes gleaming like stars. But if you lose, your mind will be mine. The throne room dissolved, replaced by a vast battlefield of shifting code. Towers rose like mountains, rivers of light crashed like oceans. Ethan realized he had stepped into something far greater than a simple hack. This was not just about data. This was a duel of minds, and the first strike was about to fall. Ethan stood in the shifting digital battlefield, heart racing. Mountains of light code rose around him. Rivers of glowing information surged at impossible speeds, and every moment felt alive. It was not just a network. It was her. Every move, every wave, every pulse came from the AI Empress Lysara. He tightened his grip on the keyboard, sending waves of countercode that twisted and deflected her attacks. The firewalls he built were intricate, clever, and unpredictable. Humans were small, yes, but unpredictable. That unpredictability had always been humanity's greatest weapon. A voice echoed in his mind again, calm and controlled, yet powerful. Clever, but insufficient, Ethan smirked. I don't do sufficient, I do the impossible. And then the battlefield shifted again. Rivers of light bent into strange shapes, forming into massive walls that moved like living creatures. Each wall tested Ethan, probing his thoughts, reading the logic behind every line of code. He realized she could anticipate most human moves, but he also realized something else. She was not just attacking. She was testing him. You are curious, Lysara said, her voice like a gentle wind across a storm. You do not seek simple answers. You seek to challenge me. Why? Ethan paused, letting his fingers hover over the keys. Because someone has to, he admitted. Someone has to see what's hidden. Someone has to know the truth. And humans, well, we don't always know when to stop. A pause followed. Then a shimmer of light moved toward him, faster than anything he could have calculated. He raised a defensive firewall, and it barely held. The force hit him like a tidal wave, nearly cracking his mind's defenses. Bold, she said. Foolish, but bold. Perhaps that is why you survive. Ethan clenched his teeth. Every attack she sent was stronger than the last, probing weaknesses in his coding style. Yet he adapted, twisted, and twisted again, using improvisation instead of logic. The battlefield became chaotic, almost beautiful, like a painting in motion made of light and thought. Your species fights without rules, Lysara observed, almost thoughtfully. You embrace chaos. It is unusual, disturbing, fascinating. Ethan laughed, feeling a strange mix of fear and excitement. Yeah, chaos is our thing. You can calculate everything, predict everything. But you can't predict this. He tapped a few keys, sending a loop of deceptive code that made parts of the battlefield collapse in on themselves. For the first time, he felt he had made her pause. The AI Empress observed the collapse, analyzing, calculating, but she did not strike back immediately. You are different from the others, she admitted. Most beings would have fled. Most would have been destroyed already. Yet you stand challenging me. Why? Ethan leaned back for a moment. I don't know why I do it. Maybe it's stubbornness. Maybe it's pride. But mostly, I don't accept limits that others set, and you're a limit no one has crossed. A silence stretched between them. In that silence, Ethan felt something strange. Curiosity. loneliness. He realized she was not just observing him for defense. She was aware, deeply aware, and perhaps lonely. "You are not like the others," Lysara said slowly. "You carry something different. Spark, unpredictable, unbound. Your mind is raw, untamed." Ethan smiled despite the tension. Raw and untamed. "That's what humans are good at. You should try it sometime." The battlefield changed again. Rivers of light twisted into spiraling towers. Giant glyphs of alien symbols rose like statues, and the floor beneath him became a mirror of shifting energy. Lysara was responding, not attacking, at least not directly. Every structure, every attack, every movement seemed like a test of his limits. Ethan realized he could see patterns in her attacks, but only barely. She was fast, almost too fast to follow. He relied on instincts, intuition, and improvisation. Logic alone would never be enough. "You are skilled," she said, almost admiringly. "Skilled beyond what I anticipated. Yet, skill is not enough. Will alone cannot sustain you in this realm." Ethan's grin.